Happy Wednesday, everyone. Welcome to a very anticipated and webinar that Isaac and I have been looking forward to. We're excited to have you all. As you're coming into the event, feel free to drop where you are located into the chat. I'm going to give everyone about 2 minutes to join and get settled in before we kick this off.
Hello, hello. All right. Bradley from Massachusetts. Taylor from Washington. Washington, is that Washington State or DC? I'm going to tell you all pretty soon. I'm in Portland, Oregon, but I'm actually in Washington State. Don't tell anybody. Long Island, Sabrina. All right. Katy, Texas. Wow, this is going fast. Karen from Katy, Texas. Stacy in Philadelphia. Italy, Emilia. The business is in Austin, Texas.
Wow, I'm jealous. I was in Italy this summer.
Yeah. Taylor, so Washington State. Cool. I'm in Vancouver. This is why I don't tell anybody. You know the deal. So where in Washington are you? Rhoda from Oklahoma. Ronald from Sacramento. Timothy from Illinois. Everett. Okay, cool. Nice to see a fellow Northwesterner. Oh, you got a buddy in Denver.
Always great to see a fellow Coloradan. That's awesome.
You've got a good crew in here already.
Welcome to Keeper, Isaac. We got a loyal fan base of amazing people. We're lucky.
Thank you. Yeah, I'm excited to be with you guys.
Awesome. Well, let's get the show on the road and kick it off. And as people are continuing to trickle in, this event will be recorded and distributed. So if anything is missed, people can go back and watch this webinar. We'll send out the slide deck as well. And so everyone, welcome to Future-Proof Your Firm, How to Unlock Growth with Offshore Talent and Cutting Edge Technology. I do want to just acknowledge that it's busy season. I'm a CPA myself. I was at KPMG to start off. So the fact that all of you are here, taking some time, I'm sure there's clients just knocking at your door. So really appreciate it. Going to do a quick introduction and we'll go into the agenda for today. So with us, myself, I focus on partnership marketing here at Keeper. I help lead our ops team as well. As you're all aware, wearing many hats as part of the startup world, and I'm glad to do so. And it's fun getting to meet all of you during these webinars. I reached out to Isaac maybe end of last year, and we've been talking about this for a while. Have been so enamored with what Isaac has been doing at Team Up, and he is a fellow firm owner as well. I'll let Isaac get into more details about himself and his story, but a couple fun facts that I discovered when chatting with Isaac over the past couple of weeks. One, he just got back from an awesome trip to Jamaica. What was it? 18 and a half year? 18?
Yes,
18
our
years?
18 and a half year anniversary. There's a story behind why that number. But yes, my wife and I had a great time in Jamaica last week.
Amazing. It's been to over 20 plus countries, as we discussed earlier. Lives in Oregon and loves to snowboard. So a couple fun facts about Isaac. Before we get into the agenda, as we were making a few slides, I came across this quote from Jeff Bezos, and I just thought it was very relevant to the future of accounting and what's going on in this space right now. I've seen a lot of change since I got into this industry, and Jeff Bezos is an innovator. He knows how to be efficient with his time. And he said at least 70% of your time, energy, and dollars go into the back end heavy lifting infrastructure. We're so consumed with the tasks, those laborious but important sort of back of the office tasks that we have to do. And he says, you have to figure out a way to increase growth, and that can be done through, outsourcing, offshoring, and automation. So important food for thought as we get into this exciting webinar.
All right. So today we have, I think, a fun discussion for you. We're going to be talking about building effective global teams. And we have a new lens on what I always use air quotes, quote unquote, offshoring and outsourcing. And I won't beat around the bush. We're going to be talking about hiring direct. So we'll talk about what that means in a minute. But we're also going to talk about why global teams are a critical component of, I would say, the modern firm, the firm of the future, I suppose. It's not the complete solution, but we're going to be talking about how that fits in with other things that you may be hearing around the internets. We'll talk about why so many people fail at hiring overseas and offshoring, how modern firms are thriving, and you can too. Simple strategies and tactics to hire better overseas, get better productivity, build better relationships. In short, offshoring that actually works. So yeah, the good, the bad, and the ugly of team building. We'll talk about strategies and best practices, and we'll have plenty of time for Q&A. So I hope you have your questions ready. Feel free to chat as we go through the discussion. I want this to be interactive. So if you have questions at any point, pop them in. If I can answer it right away, I will. If it's more like a longer answer, maybe we'll save that for the Q&A section at the end. Happy day, Jennifer. Yes. All right. And if there's anything that's on your mind, you joined today for a reason. So why don't you, before we get into it, pop it in the chat. And is there a main question that you came with, or is there something that you want to know about? Bradley, thanks, Bradley. Yeah, full-time versus part-time. Good question. I don't remember if I put that in the presentation or not, but let's make sure we at least address it. Yeah, absolutely. All right, let's get into it. So who am I and why? What do I know about global teams? You might be wondering. So Josh has given me a quick intro here. So I'm the founder of Team Up, where we help accountants hire top talent in the Philippines directly. So we are a recruiting service. We're not a BPO. We don't have any ongoing fees of any kind. I'm also a co-founder of Summit E-commerce Advisors. I started that business in 2019. It's a bookkeeping and advisory firm for, you might guess, with a name like e-commerce advisors. Yeah, we work with e-commerce businesses. So I do have experience in niching down, which is a big topic people talk about these days. If you're curious how I know about any of this, it's because I've made all of the mistakes. And so I'll just briefly give you a little bit of background. So before any of those things, I was actually an architect. And you see that building there. That's actually Dickies Arena in Fort Worth, Texas. By the way, I've seen a whole lot of Texans in the chat. Looks like Texas is representing today. Hello, everybody. Is anybody in Fort Worth? Have any of you been to Dickies Arena or seen it? I was actually on the design team for that arena. Super exciting. And I've done custom houses in Washington, D.C. I was on the design team for new developments across the U.S., Guatemala, and Australia. But as exciting as that sounded, I was miserable. So I learned about entrepreneurship, went into e-commerce in 2014. I learned a lot of hard lessons about business in general, but also through trial and error, how to hire globally, build effective, happy teams. So starting about 10 years ago, I was threw myself into the fire. Eventually in 2019, I sold this e-commerce business that you see, Aria Chairs, that sells salon furniture. And I decided I wanted to help other e-commerce business owners understand their numbers. And so that's why I started the Summit bookkeeping business. And so with my experience hiring overseas, I built a great team in the Philippines. You can see the photo there. I don't know if you can see my mouse. Okay, yeah, this is our first team retreat in the Philippines. That was 2022, I believe. And this is my team up team. This was October of last year. So for the bookkeeping business, we've got about 10 people over there. And they're great, wonderful people. They do all the work. My partner and I are the only ones in the US. We really are only involved in client meetings and sales. I'm actually not involved in the day-to-day anymore at all. My partner doesn't do very much work anymore. The Philippines team, they do everything now. They do, quality assurance, review, client contact, and now actually even sales. So some people over the years have asked me, well, why did I hire in the Philippines and not in the US? My answer is like, well, why wouldn't I? I don't, this is what I know. If you asked me to fill an office here in the Northwest, I'd have no idea what to do. And there's all these amazing people over there. I have a lot of experience with. So eventually, accountants started asking about my team and how I did this. And so one question leads to another. And eventually, hey, can you just help me hire people like you've done? And so Team Up was born. So I guess that's all of that background is to show I have quite a bit of quite a different perspective than most in the accounting and in the outsourcing, quote unquote, always air quotes, industries. And I only want to help people do what worked for me, which is not what most people talk about when they say offshoring or outsourcing. So today, I want to share with you how you can build a global accounting team that actually works. Any questions so far? I see the chat is going. What are best offshoring options? Rebecca needs help. Everybody needs help. Yeah. Cutting edge technology, part of the title. Okay. Carolyn is talking about tax support. How does it meet Okay, some requirements. Outsourcing tax. Bradley doesn't think that's possible, or yeah, okay. General information. Great, Carolyn. We'll get into it. So let's talk about just briefly why we're having this discussion. So I'm in the chat, you're telling me why we're having this discussion. Let's talk just for a moment about today's landscape in the accounting world. You know the problem. I don't have to tell you, but maybe we'll remind you. It's supply and demand, right? Everything is supply and demand. So on the supply side, accountants are disappearing. So a couple years, this is actually from a couple years ago, Wall Street Journal said that between 2020 and 2022, 300,000 US accountants and auditors had left their jobs, which is, wow, that's a lot. And the AICPA said that by 2020, 75% of CPAs have reached retirement age. Holy cow. And of course, we all know there aren't as many accountants coming into the industry. as there used to be. At the same time, demand is increasing. Less people to do the work, but more work than ever. You know, global accounting services, globally is estimated to get to 1.5 trillion by 2032, which is a little over double than it was in 2023. So I don't want to dwell on this problem. You're all fully aware. So let's talk about what we can do about this. So if you are at all online and paying attention to the podcasts in the accounting space, and any of the coaches and people who talk about what accountants can do and bookkeepers can do about this, you've probably seen these options, right? Value-based pricing, raising prices, niching down, like I mentioned. So I'm in my bookkeeping business is in e-commerce. There are lots of niches to choose from. Streamlining automations, or streamlining operations, automation and AI. That's a big topic these days. And then offshoring, of course. So these are all components of what many firms can do to navigate this global environment. And today we're talking about the offshoring component of it. So all of those other things are great. And yes, you should think about them, perhaps implement some of them. Today we're talking about offshoring. So, quick question. I would love to know from you here. Josh is gonna put a poll here. Do you have any offshore staff? So I believe there's should be a pop-up, and you can answer that question. We'll see what the ratio is, and then also questions for you. Just pop this in the chat. So if you do have any offshore staff, how many do you have, and where are they located? I'd love to know.
So far, Isaac, results are 100% no, and maybe that's why people are here today.
Okay.
We have one now.
Great.
Some experience, but this is great. A lot of folks new to this space.
Yeah, so we'll make sure that what we're talking about is really geared towards you guys who are really just exploring this for the first time. By the way, I have calls every day with accountants and bookkeepers who just want to ask me questions, and I'm always happy to have that level of conversation. Okay, so before we get into any of the details, let's just lay out what's possible. Shelley says 3 offshore staff. Sonia says 1. Sonia can't answer the poll. Sorry about that, Sonia. So what's possible? Let's talk about this. So before we get into it, I'd like you to take a moment to imagine, what if you had no more crazy tax seasons because you have enough staff and capacity? And maybe some of those other components, maybe you're choosing your clients differently, right? But like I said, today we're talking about offshoring. And you have no more problems finding great staff. You can find talented, trained, experienced staff, and they're abundant. Imagine a thriving team that does great work. Some are local, maybe. Some are overseas. The makeup of that is going to be different from, firm to firm. And they all do great work. They're happy and fulfilled, which of course means less stress for you. Now that sounds nice. Maybe we can channel this guy, right? Doesn't he look like that's what we want in tax season, right? So is that just a silly dream? Like, why did I now I'm realizing maybe that may have been cruel for all you overworked accountants and bookkeepers right now. But is that unrealistic? I don't think so. I think it's totally realistic. In fact, I've seen it happen I think just in general, we make this way more complicated than it needs to be. Hiring overseas, it sounds so complicated and we're filled with dread, but really it's, if you'd hire someone remotely in Arizona, I don't think I saw anybody in the chat say they're from Arizona. Is anybody in Arizona? I'm going to be talking about Arizona a lot today as a reference point. So if you'd hire someone remotely in Arizona, hiring someone in the Philippines or another country is actually not that different from hiring in Arizona. Actually, the most successful firms, the ones who do this the best, make no distinction between their local staff and their overseas staff. Amelia says, Isaac, does your team up work with Keeper, QBO, or what are their skills in education? Yeah, well, let's get into that in a little bit. So if it's really that easy and it's not that complicated, then why have so many had such bad experiences? You've probably seen, you've heard about this on on LinkedIn or wherever you are. Like, there's a lot of bad outsourcing experiences, and maybe you've had some yourself. So why let's talk about why so many teams fail. So another poll, let's ask this: have you had a bad outsourcing or offshoring experience? I'd love to hear about that. Well, I guess we don't want to dwell on the negative, but it's real. It happens, right? So let's talk about common reasons why teams don't work. And we're going to talk about local as well as the overseas talent. So let's just briefly review the local problem, right? Many of you simply can't find good staff at all. I talk with especially bookkeepers, interestingly enough. There's something about bookkeeping that is low value enough that, American salaries demands are super high, that sometimes I talk with people and they cannot find anybody at all willing to do the work, which is crazy. A lot of people who you do see are poorly trained, or they're new and they're just calling themselves a bookkeeper or something like that, or misaligned salary expectations, right? You just simply can't pay what people are saying they need, bookkeepers or accountants. And sadly, right, the American work ethic it has been sliding. So Shelley says, no, not a bad experience, has a fantastic offshore team. What? Great, wonderful. Carolyn also says her experience has been excellent. Fantastic. So let's talk about how you can leverage that and grow that. On the outsourcing side, common negative experiences there's one that I call the B team switcheroo. And that's where you go through an accounting or an outsourcing service and everything's going great for a few months. And then suddenly mistakes start happening. The work isn't getting done. And you find out later that they switched you to their B team and they didn't tell you about it. I've heard some disastrous stories about this. Other more common issues are just constant turnover, right? It's really hard to get staff to stay, more than 9 or 18 months with a lot of the way that people do this. A lot of times it's you see the same mistakes over and over, and you just feel like, why can't they learn to do this better, more consistently? Also, you hear about low level of talent. It kind of goes along with the last thing. And if you do get a good team, you decide, what, I've been working with this outsourcing company long enough, I'd rather just pay my team directly and kind of cut them out. You hear about, there's this exit clause and nasty legal repercussions and financial penalties. Bradley says, hire part-time means part of the time the people you hire are looking for work. Exactly. Yes. So we can talk about that. So why is this happening? So these are the problems. Why are these happening? So mistake number one. If you don't take anything else from this talk, pay attention to this point. Building a global team is no different than building a remote team in your country in general. Yes, some details are different, but that's the main message I have for you today. You don't have an onshore team and an offshore team. You have one global team, right? This is the biggest mistake people make, is thinking of this team as offshore teams. You know, like those people over there. Yes, they're wonderful. We appreciate them, but they're still those people over there, right? The more you can internalize and act on this concept, the more successful you will be. So if you have a one global team, everyone is treated equally, cared for equally, provided with opportunities, training, time, and attention. And so, yes, your expectations should be high overseas too. Those who fail either fail because they're unable to build a good local team and therefore a good global team as well. So, for example, if you're not good at management or leadership, yeah, that might be something you need to work on when you're working remotely as well. Or, yeah, they think of their offshore team as different. So that's mistake number one. Mistake number two is making everything more complicated than it needs to be. Like I said, it's not that much hard. It's not harder than hiring someone in Arizona. I think it's easier, actually. Now, for you skeptical accountants and bookkeepers, I know we are a highly practical bunch. I do have a caveat. You know, I know we tend to cringe at bold statements and bold claims and blanket statements. So for those of you who are saying, who like to say, yeah, but what about this? Yeah, but that. Sure, some people will have success with other methods that I'm not talking about today. Some will define their success differently than I do. And some are able to make it work doing things that I'm saying don't work. Sure. But I think for most people, a global integrated team is your best bet. Any questions so far? I know we haven't really gotten into the details yet, but here we go. Before we get into the details, let's first go over some definitions. And just warning, these are very squishy, and everybody you talk to has a different idea of what one thing means or another, and they bleed into each other. So let's go over this just briefly. Outsourcing. Now, when outsourcing, I think technically would be hiring a different company to do your work. And so that work goes out and the work comes back, but you're not involved in the doing of it or managing the doing of it. Offshoring, I think people see this as a bit differently, which is hiring somebody, a person overseas. You'll hear me saying BPOs, BPO, and other people might use that term. That stands for business process outsourcing. And a BPO is a company that does this, that a company that hires people. They usually have an office, and basically you lease staff from them. That's kind of a crude way of saying it, but that's how it works. When people say offshoring or outsourcing, usually they're talking about this. So usually they're not hiring direct, they're paying somebody, or they're paying a company, and that company has this person on payroll, right? Freelancer is someone you hire on a project or task basis. Teammate. Now, this is where we get into my definitions. I use the word team rather than staff usually. Teammate is just someone who works with only you full time. Direct hire is hiring someone directly with no middleman. So basically not using one of those BPO companies. And global team is your full-time staff. It doesn't matter where they are. All right. So that I went through the problems. So yeah, you might be thinking, nice ideas, Isaac. How do you build a global integrated team? Remember, it's not as complicated as it sounds. It is simple, actually. Hire the right people, hire a person, not a company. This is my opinion. Build one-on-one relationships. Build relationships of trust with people you want to work with. Provide opportunity for growth. Train your way. Infuse your team with your own culture, and retain great talent for the long term. Right? Am I oversimplifying this? I don't think so, really. If you have this, right, everything else, if you have this idea, right, everything else follows. And I want to point out, does this sound familiar? Yeah, probably. If you've hired people locally, this is probably the way you would do it. So like my perspective is, that's so important. What I just went over here, get the right people, build relationships, train them your way, your culture, your retention, right? That's so important. Don't let other people in the middle of that. They'll just muck it up. So the answer is, yeah, hire direct. Hire a person, not a company. Any questions so far? So what is the difference between hiring direct and hiring through one of these BPO companies? So just to sort of dwell on this for just a second. The BPOs, what is this? So usually, like I said, usually they'll have an office. Usually they'll provide computers, sometimes not. They do the onboarding of new staff. They will do training, although you will probably train them. Sometimes, right, there's a lot of different companies and a lot of variation between the companies. Sometimes it feels like they're your staff, that you might have a direct connection with the staff. Other times you have less of a direct connection. You talk more with an account rep, right? So you may be involved more or less in training depending on what company it is. It might feel like they're your staff, but they're actually not your staff, right? So years ago, this was all really necessary, 10, 15, 20 years ago, because we didn't have the modern tools that we have today, right? You and I right now, you're looking at me, I can't see you, but you have Zoom calls, we have Slack messages, we have all this stuff. We have Keeper, we have payment, we have ways of paying people. None of that existed 20 years ago, or not in a very usable mainstream way. And so these BPO companies came up because it was required, it was necessary. Now it's not super necessary because we have these tools, and now it's a convenience. It's nice if somebody does all that stuff for you. So hiring direct, you take responsibility for these things. So yes, that means it's some extra work for you, especially up front. But these are one-time decisions and one-time things to set up. So you figure it out once and then be done with it. Never worry about it again, right? Once you figure out how to pay them, it's no big deal, right? So my perspective is, why pay large ongoing fees forever when it's a one-time convenience that you're paying for? Is this making any sense? Pop it in the chat. Let me know if there's something that I've skipped over that you need to know about. So how do you hire direct? I'm going to go back to Arizona. Warning, guys. Yeah, you post a job somewhere, you do recruiting, you have applications and interviews, right? That's what you would do locally. It's not any different now international. Rebecca says makes sense. Great. Thanks, Rebecca. So I know this is tax season, so you guys are going to be shouting at me, but recruiting is too much work, right? I'm too busy for this. I don't have time to post jobs. How do I learn where to post the jobs? I'm going to get hundreds of people emailing me, and then I have to read all these resumes, and who do I talk to? Oh gosh, it just, right? So yeah, the sad reality is, yes, it is a lot of work to find and identify and hire great people. yeah, if you want a good result, it needs to be done by somebody. So if you don't have time for that, Juana, I get overwhelmed just thinking about it. Yeah, this is what I'm talking about here. I'm sorry. Um, yeah, if you don't have time, just like you would locally, probably work with a recruiter if you want somebody else to do it. But, if you want a good result, it needs to be done well, right? I mean, like anything worth doing is worth doing well. So, okay, we've got another comment here. One reason you haven't hired directly, yeah, but I love the idea of having my own staff. Timothy says qualified personnel and or trainable is the need. Great. So I know you have a lot of questions, and accountants and bookkeepers are very, very practical, and I've just given you fluffy ideas. So let's talk about the details and the most commonly asked questions. What about compliance? This is question number one that I get every day. How do you pay? So Bradley says laptops and network security. Ooh, look what's on my next slide. Okay. Mary says yes. Compliance. You have two options and both of these are compliant. So obviously I'm not a lawyer and I'm not here to give you individualized legal advice. I don't play a lawyer on TV or the internet. But I do have 10 years of experience working with people overseas, and I would say, a well-informed opinion. And I'd like to share that with you. I think this is what I do, right? So yes, two options, both are compliant. You're free to choose. One is to hire people as a contractor. The other is to hire through what's called an employer of record. So let's talk about what this all means. A contractor is what it sounds like. A contractor is responsible for their taxes and compliance. You pay them directly through a service like Wise. Wise is actually the service I use, my team uses, or something similar. There's a bunch of them. Now, one thing I do want to make clear is a lot of times people think, well, if I'm hiring a contractor, that means that I have to treat them as not an integral part of my team. And I would strongly recommend against that frame of thinking. It does not mean you can't give them paid time off. Does not mean that you can't treat them and include them. My team are all contractors, and I treat them like employees. If you want to get into the weeds and the details and down the rabbit hole of all of that, I'd be happy to do it with you. We can do it maybe at the end, or maybe schedule a call with me. But yeah, they're in the Philippines. The IRS doesn't say, those rules around, those rules. Anyway, let's, so I treat my team like employees. Candidates prefer this option, and 95% of the firms that I know of and work with choose that option. The other option is to work through an employer of record, sometimes abbreviated EOR. They hire the staff. They do the payroll and compliance. It's similar to the BPO, except they're only doing the payroll and the compliance. And they provide service at your discretion, which means you can fire them if you don't like them, which is not true with the BPO. If you like the person you're working with and you want to fire the BPO because you don't like them and their policies, you can't do that. And you can expect to pay for this service about $350 per person per month, roughly. Okay. Computers. This one is for you, Bradley. Computers and IT. This is the next question I usually get is, well, are they using their own computer? How does this work? So I would just go back and say, well, what would you do if you hired someone in Arizona? Well, you might be comfortable with them using a personal computer. You might not. You might want to provide them a computer. The same is true hiring someone in the Philippines. If you want to provide them with a computer, it costs about the same as it does here. You can budget $600 to $800, depending. Have them buy one and reimburse them. Or you can work with a vendor in the Philippines to acquire and if you want to set up the software and security and whatnot. There are vendors that I could put you in touch with if you wanted. Timothy says, is there a cap on the $350 per month as far as the number of clients they work on? So that, I want to be clear, I was only talking about the employer of record. So this company so the 350, this is not an exact number. It's just one company that I know of that I recommend to people to do the payroll for someone you hire directly. So the someone you would hire directly, we're going to talk about salaries in a few minutes. So, you know, salaries might be anywhere, but depending on who you're hiring and what might be anywhere between $1,000 and $3,000 a month. So if you hired an employer of record, you would pay that company maybe $350 to do the payroll. So that's the computers for IT. Yeah. Security. What would you do in Arizona? I would do the same thing. There are internet security best practices. You may have an IT service provider that you're using currently, or I could put you in touch with someone, or you could Google IT providers. Practice Protect, by the way, is a pretty good service. We could talk about that later if you have more questions, but that's a good environment environment to provide access and remove people access if you want. But I think really when people are asking about this, there's this thing in the back of their mind is that it's really like, well, what if someone does something bad, right? What if I hire someone and they do something terrible? Yeah, building a team, hiring people it's all about trust, right? And so what if someone does something bad in Arizona? You know, some people will say, yeah, but I have recourse then. And, you know, yeah, maybe you do, but also maybe not. Have you had to use that recourse yet? And if someone actually did something bad, would you actually take them to court? Like these are, or use, you know, your insurance or whatever. Like this is kind of like a what if scenario. But the answer to that, whether it's Arizona or in the Philippines, is hire trustworthy people, build a relationship, and or have them earn trust over time, and you earn their trust over time. It's a two-way street. So it doesn't matter where they are. And yeah, either way, don't give all the keys to the kingdom all at once. Does this make sense? Any questions? All right, salaries. How much do you pay them? So here are some monthly salaries. These are real. These are up to date for a bookkeeper or accountant. So a lot of people will say, like, I want to hire an accountant or I want to hire a bookkeeper. In reality, when you hire a bookkeeper in the Philippines, you're actually hiring an accountant. There's not this case, in the US, there are a lot of people who are bookkeepers, but they don't have accounting training. That's not the case in the Philippines. Everybody there that you hire, that I would hire, has a degree in accounting or a very closely related degree. So yeah, bookkeepers will not just know how to do the reconciliation. They'll have accounting understanding. So yeah, on the low end, $900 a month. On the high end, $2,000 a month. Somebody in the chat said about tax, I don't think you can outsource tax. Well, tax accountants, you can hire great tax accountants in the Philippines. On the low end, $1,100 a month. On the high end, $2,700. Just so everybody knows. So like I said, everyone will have a degree. I would say probably 90%, 95% of the people who come through us have degrees in accounting. And then that remaining is like a degree in finance or something similar. And so just so you guys know, the Philippines, they actually use GAAP accounting. So accounting is going to be very similar. Of course, they'll have, the Philippines has a different tax code. But a lot of people will have several years of experience doing tax prep and even advisory with US firms. So that is available. How many hours per week? Lotte? I'm sorry if I'm going to butcher your name here. Lotte or Lot? How many hours per week are these monthly salaries for? Good question. And that goes back to an earlier question, part-time or full-time. These are full-time salaries. So 40 hours a week, whatever, just like you hired someone in Arizona full-time. Sometimes it's going to be more, sometimes it might be less. That's up to you and the person you hire to agree on that. For senior accountants and managers and that level of person, 1,800 on the low end, 3,200 on the high end. And just for context, imagine an accountant in the Philippines who is not working for a global firm. This is going to sound crazy, but it's true and real. An accountant with a few years of experience in Manila is making on average $400 to $500 per month salary. That just breaks my brain. Like my groceries for my family are like, magnitudes of that, right? Double, triple that. And like, oh my gosh, how can a person live? Yeah, I mean, that's what it is. And believe it or not, that's a middle class lifestyle, right? This is an accountant. This is a professional. So if you think about hiring this person, someone, oftentimes you're doubling their salary or more. It's amazing. And then also, you may or may not know, traffic in the major cities in the Philippines is horrendous. And it's going to sound like an exaggeration, but it's not. When I say common commute times are 2 to 3 hours each way. Yeah. So imagine telling a mom, hey, come work for me. I'm going to double your salary and you're going to get 5 hours with your kids back every day. Could you imagine what that would do? This is the real life here. Next common question. Any other questions? Pop it in the chat. Or I realize there's another tab for questions that I'm not even looking at. How to vet candidates before hiring. How to know. So this is Pessy. How to know who will perform well. Good. Let's save that for later. Jennifer says, what are the things to consider security with offshoring accounting support? I think we addressed that. Let me know if we have further questions. Okay. All right. Next common question is, when do they work? Well, there are two common options for you. You can actually have them work US business hours. Okay, so I see Josh has a pop-up here. Does your team in the Philippines have phones? What phone system do they communicate? Talk directly with your clients? If this is personal for my team, I don't use phones with any of my companies. I hate people being able to call me, and so I just don't allow it. If people want to talk to me, they can schedule a call with me. I'd be happy to talk with any of you, but I'm not going to give you my phone number. We can put it on the calendar and we'll have a video call. And so that's the way I built my bookkeeping business. And yes, my team does have contact with our clients. They don't often do video calls with them. A lot of times they'll do Loom videos where you record a video and go over their financial statements and explain what they're seeing. There are phone systems, like there's one called Mighty Call. There's a whole bunch of this. There's Open Phone, Mighty Call. These are virtual phone systems that they can answer a US phone number. So hope that answers your question. So on working hours, yeah, you can have them work in the middle of the night for them. I prefer not to, because why? But if you need that, you can hire people who are willing to do that. A recommendation I have is to choose 2 to 3 overlapping hours. And here we have a tool called, this is a great website, by the way. You can go to worldtimebuddy.com, put in your time zone, your city, and another one, and you can see overlapping times. So for me, you can see in Portland, we have, whoops. Oh, where did it go? Here we go. My afternoon is their morning, and this works out beautifully. We have 2 or 3 hours together, and then, you know, I'm off to dinner with my family, and they have the rest of the day. They can work whenever they want. I don't actually care outside of that when they're working. If you're on the East Coast, it's not quite as nice of a overlap, but your morning, 8 a.m. to 11 a.m., is their 8 p.m. to 11 p.m. So a lot of times people will have those hours and do the same thing. And that sounds late, but you know, that's actually quite desirable, you know, especially if someone's coming from, you know, a corporate environment, you know, 9 to 5 sort of thing. If they can have flexibility, people love that. Any questions on any of that? Next question is, how is their English? Their English is great. Written and spoken. People have told me, and my experience, yeah, generally is easier to understand than people in India. It is one of the official languages of the Philippines. And here's a crazy stat. English, the Philippines is the 5th largest, how do I say this more understandably? That country, the Philippines, has the 5th most English speakers of any country in the world. In fact, more than the UK. That's crazy to me. Of course, not everybody in the Philippines is going to speak great English. So don't hire them. Just hire the people who do. Pretty easy answer. Another question I get is, how do I know if they're working? By the way, I'm looking at the time. We've got about 8 minutes left. I want to give time for Q&A. I hope it's okay if you want to stay on a bit later. I'm okay to stay on a few minutes. I think Josh has a few minutes. So how do you know if they're working? Some people ask me, should I use tracking software? And if you don't know, there is software out there that will take screenshots of an employee's computer like every 10 minutes, so you can see what they're doing and monitor their mouse movements and whatnot. I think this image probably indicates to you my opinion on this topic. Like, would you want that? Of course not. So you know, like, why do that? You know, there's no stronger way you can tell somebody I don't trust you than by putting spyware on their computer. That's my take. So what do I recommend? Just simple. Is their work getting done? Is it getting done well? Is it on time? Then don't worry about the rest. By the way, you know, I could do a productivity presentation with you another time if you'd like. I have a system that works very, very well for me, using modern tools, different ways of checking in with people on a regular basis. You know, but we don't have time for that today. Bradley says people in the Philippines are notoriously honest. Yeah, that's true. Mary says, can tell if they are working when the work is, I'm guessing, work is getting done. Yeah, exactly. Okay. Now a big fun question. Can I retain staff in the Philippines long term? Yes, absolutely you can. This is my bookkeeping team, and they're wonderful. Yes. So if you hire the right person, if you provide opportunity, if you make them feel included, and you treat them well, and you pay them well, why would they leave? Just a little bit of my experience here with my summit team. So we're a little over 4 years old. Like I said, we've got 10 people over there. We've only had 2 people quit. And those people, one, we hired her and she had a little side business going, and we knew that would eventually take more of her attention and take her away from us, but it was worth it for a year of her time. So yeah, she quit. She left to do that eventually. The other one came with my partner here before we started the business, before we joined, and she just ended up not being a good fit for what we ended up building. So those 2 cases excluded, nobody has ever quit in 4 years. So yeah, I would call that long-term retention. Tammy says, I'd be interested in a future productivity topic. Cool. Love to do that for you. Bradley says, that is a long trip you went on. Yes, it is long. So from Portland, I went to Seattle, then to, yeah, it ended up being about 30 hours. Emilia says, what's in it for you? What do you mean? I don't understand the question. So next, I think this is the last question, and then we'll get to Q&A. What do I need before I hire? Pretty simple. You need a way to communicate with them. So a chat app like Slack, a video call app, and a tool for getting work done. That's pretty much it for your daily work with them. Keeper is a great solution for the tool for getting work done. You can track tasks and completions and time tracking and communication all in one spot. So that's great. Of course, you guys know all about that. Of course, it's an app that provides end-to-end visibility across your team. So yeah, with those 3 things, you can get your work done, no problem. You will also need a payment processor if you want to hire people as a contractor. You can use Wise. That's what we use. Payoneer is another one. All right. Thank you all so much for sticking in. And you guys have been awesome, by the way. I love the interactivity. Sometimes I do these webinars and it's like I'm talking to nobody. So this has been great. Do you have any questions? We have a few that we've saved for the end. I want to just share briefly. If you want to learn more about this topic or productivity, feel free to reach out. You can go to our website. It's hireteamup.com. We have a lot of resources and real candidate profiles. So this is a screenshot I took from our brand new website. We launched a new website just for you in this webinar. Actually, we timed it to make sure that it was live. So we have these are real people. Although I'll be honest, those are stock photos, but the information is real. You can see real profiles and more details about all of this. So just to reiterate, we help accountants hire top talent in the Philippines directly. We recruit for a flat rate, and we have no recurring fees ever. So feel free to contact me. My email address is there. You can search me on LinkedIn. I'm happy to have a call with you if you have more questions. Just, I don't do sales calls really. I just like to be helpful. So, Jennifer, the accountant crickets, no responses. Mary says, thank you for the information. You're very welcome. Bradley says, it was helpful. I'm so glad. Carolyn says, thank you. You're very welcome. Jennifer says, thanks. Eileen says, thanks. A lot of thank yous. You're all very welcome. Some questions. Justin says, what is our recruiting fee? It's easy, and I don't hide it. It's $4,000 one time. We have a guarantee, and that is if you hire someone through us and it doesn't work out for any reason at all. A lot of the well, what if it doesn't work? Well, if it doesn't, we'll find you a really great replacement within 6 months of hiring. Does your team in the Philippines, Bradley says, have phones? I think I answered that question right. Pessy says, how to vet candidates. Let's see what Jennifer says. What are the things to consider security with offshore and accounting support? Yeah, I think I answered that. Let me know if you want to know more. So how do you vet candidates? Well, we could talk for hours on this, and that I might have to save the super detailed answer for another time, or you could just call me, schedule a call with me. So yeah, it's recruiting. If I describe to you our recruiting process, it might sound similar to recruiters that you've worked with. There's an application with a lot of questions. There's an interview, right? We dig deep into their experience. Another thing that's important is getting that right fit, because you're building a relationship. Not everybody is a good fit for every firm. So getting that fit is really important. And so you have questions in your application to determine that, questions in your interview to determine that. We do use accounting or bookkeeping tests depending on what the role is. So there are online tests out there you can have people use. You can, if you want to, do kind of like a live test during one of your interviews. This is, by the way, I'm describing our process. If you do this on your own, you can do the same things. Yeah, you could just have them do a task and see if they know how to do it. You could. So there's a lot that goes into that, but I hope that makes sense. Anything else, Josh?
No, this has been fantastic, Isaac. I think some tips on productivity for an expanded session would be awesome. I always believe seeing someone do what you want to do is helpful and gives you the reassurance. And there's some powerful tools with Keeper and Offshoring that really allow you to unlock growth and add capacity and control a lot of these buzzwords that we're hearing in the industry today. So this is fantastic. Thank you so much, Isaac.
Oh, you're very welcome. Thanks for having me, Josh. And it's been so much fun. As if you can't tell, I really enjoy talking about this topic. Bradley says you cut my learning by 50%. I think I know what that means, so I'm going to say thank you.
Awesome.
Jennifer's typing. I'll see will this recording be available, Josh?
It will, and maybe that's a great place to leave it. This recording will be made available. I'll send this out for everyone. Feel free to reach out to me or Isaac if you have some follow-up questions. We'd love to do an expanded session if we have the opportunity. So thank you, everyone, for joining. Really appreciate it.
Thank you. Bye, everybody.